All right, we'll now call the August 26th City Council meeting to order, 6 p.m. Please rise for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have Juan Unda here? Seeing none, I'll be giving the invocation. Father, we thank you again for being with us tonight. Father, we thank you for your many blessings. We praise you for them, Father. We ask that you would be with us here tonight, Father. We ask that you would give us wisdom of Solomon, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Here.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Just for the record, I would appreciate if you do a motion to approve Mr. Spurlock attending by telephonic means
You want us to do that tonight?
right now.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Motion to that effect to approve Mr. Spurlock attending the meeting via phone.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Here.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. First up in the opening, we have proclamation by myself for the Daughters of American Revolution. Proclamation by the City of Avon Park, whereas September 17, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the date with appropriate ceremonies and activities, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Garrett Anderson, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Avon Park, Florida, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week, and urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. We already have a signed copy for them.
Yes.
Okay. First up, under consent agenda, have the approval of the August 12th, 2019 regular council minutes. Be looking for a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. First up, under citizens and outside agencies, we have fiscal year 18-19 audit. Ricky Helms.
Mayor, I would like to introduce Julie Fowler with the firm of Clifton Larson Allen, who will be making the presentation this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. I am
Evening.
Julie Fowler with Clifton Larson Allen. With me tonight is Sarah Timmons. She's a manager with our firm. And we're going to be presenting the results of your September 30th, 2018 audit.
Okay.
We're going to keep this at a very summarized level, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have as we go along. If we don't have an answer for you tonight, we will certainly get that back to you.
Thank you.
So we're going to break this into two sections. The first is going to be a very high-level overview of the financial results for some of the key funds, and then we'll go through our audit report. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about the financial information.
Let me just correct this also. The agenda says fiscal year 18-19. This is actually 17-18.
Okay.
Couple slides?
Yes. Right there.
Okay.
All right, so to start with, we have an abbreviated version of our statement of net position, and this is showing the city as a whole. And you'll see that there was approximately $4.8 million increase in your total assets.
Sarah, could you lean into the microphone a little, please?
Yes, I'm not sure it's on.
That's
It
on.
is. You
It
just have to
is?
get,
Okay.
straighten it up if you want.
It doesn't sound
Okay. The majority of that total asset increase would be related to your property and equipment. There was a fire truck purchase, 2 garbage trucks, the AWAS system out at the airport was repaired after the hurricane, a vacuum sewer truck, and then the airport runway projects. And then there was a total liability increase of approximately $120,000. Most of that's just related to accounts payable related to the airport project. You have no other long-term debt other than compensated absences, your other post-employment benefit liability, and then the net pension liability. Your total net position increased $3.9 million. $2.1 million of that is unrestricted. $1.6 million is investment in capital assets. On the next slide is the general fund, and this is a representation of revenues and transfers in compared to expenditures and transfers out. Your total revenues were approximately $5.1 million with a $0.1 million increase from the prior year, and $297,000 came in insurance proceeds from Irma, and there was also a decrease in transfers in from other funds. So it netted out to about a $100,000 increase. Total expenditures and transfers out increased by about the same amount, $100,000. You had the council chambers were re-roofed after Irma and other things like that.
Question, really quick.
Yes.
On the general fund, you said it was a $100,000 increase?
In revenue and expenditures.
Okay, so that the insurance payment was about $1 million?
For the general fund, about $297,000 was allocated from the insurance payment to the general fund.
Okay,
And that was offset by some decreases in transfers in, so that's why you're only seeing $100,000.
so had it not been for the insurance, then it would have been, there wouldn't have been an increase?
Correct. Your ending fund balance was $5.6 million, unassigned of $4.3 million, and that's approximate to 12 months of your expenditures for the general fund. And non-spendable of $1.2 million, that's prepaids and advances between funds. Okay. Next would be water and sewer fund. Revenues and transfers in were about $5.7 million, approximately a 3% increase from the prior year. There's fluctuations in usage that can do that. I don't believe we had any rate increases from 17 to 18. Expenditures and transfers out were $4.6 million with an overall operating income of $1.4 million in water sewer.
Can you explain why there was an increase in the
Expenditures?
revenue transfers?
In revenue or expenditures?
In the expenses, I'm sorry.
And I believe there was a $430,000 increase related to sewer maintenance and new water meter purchases.
Okay.
Are those, just a question to the city manager, are those water meter purchases going to be the ones that we're going to be reinstalling and swapping out?
That was already done.
No, we're in the process of doing that right now. Is that from water meters that were purchased last year?
We haven't done a lot of the change-outs yet. They haven't had the time to do it. They've been working on it a little bit at a time, but they just haven't been able to
But is
attack.
the equipment, I guess is my question, is the equipment purchased from
This is all from fiscal year 18.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if they bought all the equipment and it's sitting there idle inside of a barn,
That I could not.
that
tell
you
you.
wouldn't know. So
Correct.
are we using that
Yes.
for
we-
this
We do
year's?
have, yes, we do have some of that in stock. That's what we're replacing.
Okay, because that's a huge line item in our current next budget. Okay.
So it's already been purchased, we already spent it, right?
Maybe, I mean, you want to.
Well, not all of it.
We want to
Some
get an
of it.
actual inventory of what we got.
Yeah,
before
some
you
of it
tell-
is.
include
And I just simply
just-
say that it's generally considered for utilities that you should periodically change out your meters just automatically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with them buying it last year. It's just the time it's going to take to get it reinstalled. I'm just, to offset this next fiscal year, is that number reflective of what we need? And has the inventory been counted into that need? We don't know.
I
If-
don't want to tell you something that's incorrect,
Yeah,
so let me,
anyway, that would help figure out whether or not we're overspending on the budget.
correct. I'll find out.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Next, we have the airport fund. As you can see, revenues are way up in fiscal year 18, and that would be 1.6 million of that is related to the airport improvement program grant. And there were also $625,000 in insurance recoveries related to Irma in the airport fund. You'll see expenditures are not as high as you would expect when you see the airport improvement grant, but that is because the grant funds are capitalized, so they show on the balance sheet. If we go back to, well, you don't have to go back, but the statement of net position, part of that $3.9 million asset increase is the airport improvement grant and the progress made on that. So overall, the fund shows an operating loss of $361,000 because of that, and a change in net position of 1.9 million. And that leaves an ending net position of 8.6 million, 8.9 of which is invested in capital assets, and an unrestricted balance of negative 272,000.
Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the reports that we issued. The purpose of an audit, if you want to go on to one more slide, the purpose of an audit is really to express an opinion on whether financial statements are prepared in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. But audits in the state of Florida go beyond that, and we have to perform some additional procedures to comply with state law, as well as the uniform guidance for administering federal grant programs. So we've performed three kind of groups of services. The first is the opinion on the financial statements. That audit was performed in accordance with government auditing standards. We also performed an audit of your federal compliance with your major grant program, which was the airport improvement program. And then we've issued a report on compliance with the provisions of Florida statutes for investment of public funds. So on the next slide, you'll see the first of a series of slides that are summaries of the reports that we've issued. We issued the independent auditor's report, which is the opinion on whether the financial statements are prepared in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. And we've issued an unmodified opinion, which means we believe they in fact are. The next report that we issue is our report on internal control over financial reporting, compliance, and other matters under government auditing standards. We're not required to express an opinion on internal controls. However, as part of designing the tests that we perform over those financial statement balances, we do evaluate the internal controls that are in place. And if we find areas that are deficient, we're required to report those deficiencies to you. And we have three items that we consider to be material weaknesses in the internal control structure that we've reported. The first relates to timeliness of review. During our procedures, we identified that there were some items, including bank reconciliations, that were not being reviewed timely by a member of management. We also noticed that the OPEB, which is your other post-employment benefits, the census data that's used for that calculation and is sent to the actuary, was not reviewed by a person other than the preparer of the document. If you find error, or if you don't review these items, you may not find errors. That could be material to the financial statements and lead to material misstatements. So our recommendation is that the city develop some review processes so that documents, especially bank reconciliations, are timely reviewed by someone other than the preparer of the document. and also to make sure that census data is reviewed by someone other than the preparer before it's sent to the actuary. The next item, number 2, is related to procurement of goods and services. We did test a sample of procurements for compliance with the city's purchasing policy, and we identified several items that were not following the city's purchasing policy. There was some items where verbal quotes were not documented. There were some items where the procurement rationale was not documented. There were also some contracts that were very old that have not been bid out in many years that we would recommend that be done more timely, and also an instance where quotes were obtained when there should have been bids. So our recommendation is to make sure that the city is following its purchasing policy and that documentation is retained when you're doing quotes and verbal items so that you have documented evidence of why a certain vendor was chosen. Item number 3 relates to timeliness of financial statement reporting. As we communicated to the council in a letter back in May, there were some delays in completing reconciliations, preparing schedules, and providing data to the city's actuary that resulted in the financial statements being delayed. As you see, you're just now getting your September 2018 financial statements. As a result, the city's not in compliance with Florida statutes for filing your audit by 9 months after year end. So our recommendation is that you ensure that you either have internal and external or combination of resources together to make sure that those reconciliations and processes are being performed timely so that you can get your financial statements in a more timely manner and be in compliance with state statutes. The next slide is the next report there at the top is our report on compliance with your major federal grant program. And as I mentioned, that was the Airport Improvement Program. We had 3 findings related to that grant testing. And when we issue an opinion on your compliance with grants, there's 2 pieces to it. One is we issue an opinion on whether you've complied in all material respects with the provisions of that grant program. And we did issue an unmodified opinion. We believe you have complied materially with that grant. But we also look at the internal controls around that grant. Do you have controls in place to ensure that you're going to remain in compliance? And that's where we found some concerns. So we have 3 material weaknesses in internal control related to that program. So we'll start off with the first one, reporting. We identified that the first quarter's report was not filed with the grantor. You're required to file quarterly and annual reports. So this report was submitted before we completed the audit, therefore we believe you are still in compliance with the grant program. But you have that internal control weakness there because it wasn't identified that the report wasn't filed timely. So our recommendation is when you have a consultant or anyone preparing reports for your grants, someone within the city needs to ensure that those are being filed timely and that they're reviewed by someone within the city before they're submitted. Even when you hire a consultant, the city still has the responsibility to ensure that you're in compliance with the grant requirements. The next 2, cash management and special tests and provisions. That special tests and provisions is really Davis-Bacon compliance. Both of those are the same issue, just 2 separate compliance requirements where you need to have some additional internal controls in place to make sure that you're reviewing the work of the consultant and you understand that you are in compliance. Someone within city's management needs to take responsibility for that. The next letter that we issue is the management letter, and this is required by the Auditor General. And in this letter, we report instances of things that are compliance with state statutes or local laws. And the first one is continuing education for investments. The city's investment policy and Florida statutes require that someone within the city obtain 8 hours of continuing education annually on investing to make sure you're making prudent decisions for the city. For the year we audited, no one within city management completed that continuing education. So our recommendation is to ensure that that's obtained on an annual basis. And number 8 is budgets and budget amendments. Your budget is adopted at the department level, so that becomes the level of budgetary control. when we looked at the budget, the final budget compared to actual on the department level, there was one department within the infrastructure fund. That was the Public Safety Fire Department within the infrastructure fund, not the general fund, that exceeded the final budget by about $34,000. We also noticed that budget amendments were not made throughout the year. Most of the budget amendments were made after year end, so our recommendation is that really needs to be monitored on a regular basis so that you don't get to year end and have something like this sneak up on you. And finally, the last, we have one more on that.
May I interrupt you with a question on that? You said the public safety and fire. Can you identify exactly which it was, public safety or fire?
The way it's reported is fire is a department underneath the umbrella of public safety in that fund.
Okay.
So it's the fire department within the infrastructure fund.
Thank you.
I'm almost overlooked your report on compliance with section 218-415, investment of public funds. We do believe you have complied with the requirements of that statute, so we've issued an unmodified report there. And then the final slide is our required communication to you as your auditors. There are a number of things we're required to report directly to you as the group charged with governance. Some of the highlights are that you did implement a new accounting standard during this year, and that's the way other post-employment benefit, it's a tongue twister, we call it OPEB, the way that's reported, that was implemented. We did have some delays in issuing the audit, as I mentioned. There were no uncorrected or corrected misstatements that were identified during the course of our audit. Those will be audit adjustments. And then our final recommendation is that you as council are charged with oversight of the city's finances. And at least for the period we audited, we noticed that the city council was not receiving any kind of regular financial updates. So we recommended that you get either monthly or quarterly financial information that shows where you are year to date against the budget so you can make more timely, accurate decisions about the city's finances. So I know I threw a lot at you very quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
You have any questions for him?
Not at this time.
Seeing none, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, at this time, I'd like to go ahead and add an item to our regular agenda. One that spurred from our CRA meeting. We need to amend the city council agenda to add the city Christmas lights discussion. We need a motion for that, right?
You want to add that under staff or
Yeah, we'll add it under staff updates.
as a number 20 under staff then?
Right.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to include the Christmas light discussion and payment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
unanimously passed.
Thank you. Under attorney updates, we have the cross-connection control and backflow prevention ordinance.
Yes, I sent this to you for either your consideration or first reading. It's a lot of information, but generally, all water utilities have been required since the late 80s to have a cross-connection control program. It was put into code, as I recall, somewhere in the 90s, later on, making it mandatory. I understand you had to have something because you have been requiring backflow preventers. You probably have a staff policy somewhere, but we couldn't put our fingers on it. So I believe that should be in your code anyway. And so this is our first attempt at a cross-connection control program in the code. Ronnie has reviewed it. I haven't heard anything back in contrary, so if you want to read it the first time or you want to review it, like I said, there's a lot of meat there. But basically what it is your water lines provide water to certain businesses and even residences to that extent that they may have an alternative water supply, such as a pool or a well or something like that, might be required to have a backflow preventer. And this is, like I said, under state code, we're supposed to establish this position. The businesses are outlined in this code, and most of the residences would be 5/8 by 3/4. The business depends on the size of the water line, but what it does is it prevents the water in that business or residence from backflowing into your system in the event of a main break or other loss of pressure, such as putting out a fire, you're reducing the pressure in a line and things like that. And I can give you some really horrible descriptions of things that actually have happened, but I will spare you that and simply say that you don't want somebody else's water that's already entered into their premises coming back into your system, period, end of story. So that's
Or
what these do.
accidentally sewer.
Well, that was one of the ones I was going to avoid.
Okay, never mind.
You didn't have to go there.
It's mortuary fluids as well, has an actual case. So now we've done it.
Yep.
So, any rate, that's what this does, is establish the program. The program's meaningless without somebody enforcing it. I understand that Ronnie has hired somebody or is hiring somebody who's experienced in this and has a license and so on in this area, and we'll be pursuing this more actively now.
So is this a consultant or is it an employee?
It's an employee, as I understand it, somebody in his department.
Okay. So when it comes to the fees, there's nothing mentioned in here about fees? Is that something that comes back later, or
Yep,
what?
I have it in there that you can establish those by resolution. We didn't have an opportunity, because of everything else, we got all the other irons we have in the fire, that I haven't got any word back yet on that, but I felt it was very important to get this passed within a reasonable period of time. You can, when the staff establishes what those fees need to be, then we can go ahead and add those to it.
But the staff won't be installing the backflow preventers. It'll be on the homeowner or the business to do that. And what guarantee will we have that they're not going to just rig it and stick some pipe in there when we don't even know?
We're required to inspect it. They're required to have them annually tested and certified by a backflow prevention testing specialist certified in that area.
Would this be a permitted item? Would they, if they want to, when they do this, will they have to get a permit to do this, or it just?
Well, generally not.
Okay.
If it's part of their water, their incoming water system, it'll have to be permitted like anything else in the plumbing code.
Normally, a plumber would have to do that.
Yeah, a licensed
Right.
plumber would have to be involved.
Right. And, but other than that, if it's just simply, it needs to be cut in to a existing service, then that, could require code changes, or a plumber, and there might be other people that are licensed to do that. Underground contractors are licensed to do that, and so on. So, implementing that, I'd leave to the Public Works Department. But the idea here is that the work will all be done by the customer themselves. We just are verifying it, and that's pretty much how it is. Like I have backflow preventer at my house in Manatee County, and moved in last July, and in August I got a nasty gram basically saying, why haven't you had your backflow preventer tested? And so, of course, I had it tested immediately, but
What sort of costs are associated with that?
testing costs about $25 to $30. Backflow preventers for a 5/8 by 3/4 is going to probably be in the nature of $300 to $400. Installed. And that I'm shooting from the hip there, because this, although I was in the utility business, I'm no longer in the utility business. This is, and I haven't been for quite some time.
Right.
So is this part of the water connection, or is the backflow preventer something separate? Is it a separate unit?
It's part of your water line coming in.
Okay,
And
but it's not a connection per se, because we do have an amortized system where we install it and then people pay the city on their water bill. Would this be part of that,
I don't believe so.
or separate?
No, I don't believe so. You have, once it's installed, it just needs to be annually tested.
Okay. Every resident has to have it annually tested.
Yeah.
No.
Only the ones
Businesses.
that have-
Every business should have one, and probably will.
And I think that
and-
the city has in the past installed those for some people, but we're trying to get away from that. That's something that a plumber should be doing. It's after the meter, between the meter and the connection itself.
There are some residences that may be required to have them because they have a well. And the reason for that is because history has shown us, and the recommendation of the people that establish the protocols for this, say that, when somebody has a well, it's under pressure, even though it's not supposed to be connected to your system, sometimes people make a mistake and they connect one pipe to another. Next thing you know, you have a well pumping groundwater into your system. So that's something that is a part of the determination of risk section of this, and that's for your utility, your cross-connection expert to determine that, not for me. I
So-
put it in there as,
How are we gonna know who has a well and send them a letter that says that they have to have this? Or is it gonna be self?
well,
It
my,
kind of depends on if is it for new construction or is it retroactive?
it can be, it's retroactive. You're required, this has actually been required to be in place many years ago.
It would be very difficult for retroactive.
Yeah, and so, this is something that's gonna take a long time, and we're gonna tweak it as need be, but it needs to be in place to get things started in an official way, as opposed to some unofficial thing that we had before with this, because I could find nothing in the code on this.
So if someone builds something last week and they're getting ready to hook up their water, this will be in place and they're gonna have to show proof of a backflow preventer.
Yeah. Very
And then we're
rare-
gonna have to go in and inspect it.
Very, very rare for residential,
Well, business.
but businesses, yes.
But if the
Generally
house
speaking.
if they're installing a well,
Yeah.
then they're gonna have to be
I
in
leave-
compliance with
I'm not-
this.
I leave that risk determination to your staff, okay, as to whether they're going to require it from wells. It is an alternative water source, and so it is, by definition, they're allowed to require it for those under the Florida rules, Florida Administrative Code.
But I'm
And
sorry.
same with lakes, people that use lakes,
Mhm.
because, once again, you're basically pumping lake water
Mhm.
and could be pumping that into your system if there's a misconnection somewhere.
Yeah, usually if you have a well at your home, you're not running that to your actual home. You're running that for irrigation.
Mhm.
You're running that to a barn. So you would have the city water run to your home, and you would have the well water run to your everything else, basically.
If that
So-
occurred in the future, it would be pretty far in the future, because I think you have a lot of other things that need to be taken care of. Like, I'm not aware of any tests ever being done of the ones that have already been installed. And Ronnie could not find anything that indicated that somebody was requiring it, although that's required by law. Once they're in, that's a determination you all make with regard to risk, but once they're in, they have to be tested annually, period.
We got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like a little bit more time to take a look at it and see what sort of fees are associated with it. Because it is retroactive, you're basically now asking every
Mhm.
business to potentially fork
Mhm.
up a lot of money. And that $300 or $400 was for the smallest of these units. They could be much more expensive for the larger units. And it's going to depend on what sort of water usage you have. It's going to depend on the size. So I haven't heard from any, real-world contractors or anything like that to see what these realistic fees are going to be. I would like to see that before we jump all over this.
Yeah, that's why I said, it's either you want to do a first reading, or if you want to look it over and consider it, that's fine. I just need to get it in your hands so you have some time to think about what to do with it. And that goes for the second item on my list here, which is the wastewater utility ordinance. I sent this a while back to the staff. I haven't had any negative response to it, so I put it on your agenda to be considered.
Well, if you get no response, no negative, does it mean that it's good to go from them, or is it because they haven't had a chance to review it? I mean, wouldn't you
We
get
don't-
some kind of
we don't know
response?
yet.
Okay, we don't know yet. All right.
And I would recommend that you basically look this over and consider it. It's a lot.
Yes,
here,
it is.
But some of the things that you're missing are basically industrial wastewater, a good industrial wastewater regulation section. I talked to Ronnie about the need for appropriate review of what's out there and determining whether, you're actually already getting industrial waste from some people, which needs to be, ameliorated or controlled or at least watched. And he's going to be doing that. This gives you the right to do that, gets you paid for any of those expenses and things like that. There's a lot in here. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call. My office, be happy to talk about it. I've done a number of these, not just for the cities I represent, but for other cities. So be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay, is there any immediate questions?
Well, those cities would have fines and fees, structures already set up, right?
Once again, I didn't add any of that stuff.
No, I know, but they would
But-
have it that we
but
could,
We're going to continue with the ones you have in place.
okay.
Okay, your user fee, your capacity fees, your tap fees, things like that. But some of it I'm taking out of the code because it's really not necessary to have in your code. It should be available through your website. And I'm hoping that your website can do that, because most cities, that's what they provide it. You know, you want to see what the rates are, you go to the website. It's a whole lot easier for people to find it than it is to go to Unicode and find it there. So.
Are we good with Stanley Squirrel?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
back on.
All right, so it's huge, 93 pages.
So what's the next step? I mean, we're going to review this. I've read a lot of it, and it's,
Yeah. if I don't-
engineering stuff to me.
Right.
So are we waiting for staff to respond with
Well,
fees, fines, or?
I think Ricky's looked at it, but then, the billing staff should look at it as well, because there's things that relate to billing and collections and things
Okay.
like that.
Yeah, I'd like to see a report from the finance department. I'd also like to see, have Ronnie here to talk to us about the real world applications of
Mhm,
this
mhm.
and how it's going to impact all the businesses that we have. Make sure this isn't going to put a lot of extra,
Burden.
red tape and burden on people, so.
Mhm.
I think the only thing that would be additional burden, I may be mistaken, would be the mandatory connection policy. And, that's a fairly standard thing, but it varies as to what's available and what's not available, what you consider to be available, and so on. And I'm certainly open to suggestions on that.
Hopefully we can get some of that information from staff by our next meeting and kind of have it as a moving target until we
Okay.
feel comfortable with it.
Next item on the agenda under my area is Yana Concrete update.
Now you got the wastewater utility ordinance.
He
We
just
talked
did
about
that.
both.
He did them
About
both.
that.
I'm sorry, I segued into that while you were
Okay.
trying to get him on the phone.
Thank you.
They've said that they should be out of there in 60 days. That was several days ago. I asked if we could have a representative from Yana Concrete come here so that they can talk to you about it, because not for me. I mean, they're actually a holdover renter right now because the lease expired last year. And I think that in order to make this appropriate, you should extend the lease for the period of time that you approve. But I said that I can't do that. I can't approve it, and it's not for me to suggest it. It's up to you to do that and give them the additional time as you wish.
Does anyone from Yana wish to speak? Okay. Please give your name and address, Freddie.
Freddie Yana Concrete. We've been talking about it, our attorney's been talking about it, and we're gonna make it a little faster than that, because we said 60 days when we spoke, and that was back August the 13th. So from today, it'll be 45 days, and we'll be out of the facility.
Okay, my recommendation that we, if you all accept that, if you're willing to accept the 45 days, that we make an amendment to the lease that states a date certain when this is going to happen, and they'll be gone, and you guys can walk in and use it at that point. That way, nobody's in any mistake as to what's going on.
You have something you want to say?
Okay.
Didn't we extend the lease earlier? Because when the lease was up, we extended it temporarily.
It
until
was month to month.
We have
Yeah.
a staff member that would like to speak.
Danielle Phillips, City of Avon Park. Currently, Yana Concrete is under a month-to-month contract. They're supposed to be paying $25 a month.
Okay.
On that comment, we're not getting an invoice on that. Are y'all gonna invoice us, or we just make the payment? Because we did find out.
There you go. If you don't get an invoice, don't pay it.
No, I tell you what, there was not an invoice, and we went back and said, I was looking at my books, I said, we hadn't paid the lease, even though the lease is in. So I sent a check in for that amount that we actually owed, that we didn't have a contract over. So I did send that. So I didn't get a statement, so, as a matter of fact, I didn't even know what it was.
All right. If you don't want to do an amendment, then what is the date? You say you're going to be moved out by 45 days would be
It'd be October the 11th.
October the 11th.
And the building, our office, everything's out of the office. We got a few more stuff to move, but the problem is with Turn It Over, we got a little bit of stuff there to move out, and the liability of moving it out, somebody get hurt or something, somebody drive in there. That's the only concern we got, really.
Okay.
And they've made leaps and bounds just in the last couple of weeks that I've seen. I've seen truckload after truckload coming off that place, and there's a lot there to move. So,
All right, if they're on a month-to-month lease, I would just appreciate that if you all would vote to approve the 45 days and the date certain, so we have that as a record, part of the record.
okay. Do you have anything else to add, Freddie?
That's it. I'll tell you what, the city's been real good to us through the years, and we've been there for 50 years, really. It started before it was Yana Avon Park Ready Mix in 50. That's when we started the contract, and we changed it when we changed the name to Yana Concrete. So it goes back to those, and the city's been real good to us, and we really appreciate it so much. And if it wasn't for the city, we wouldn't have been here. So we really appreciate it so much.
We thank you very much for all you
Thank
do,
you.
and everybody around here that has concrete, chances are you got it from Yana Concrete.
Yeah, and we've
You're the
had a lot of-
foundation of this community. You say
There
that.
you go. Oh, that's good.
That'll be
We've
a
had a lot
dollar.
of employees, work there, and I wasn't born then yet, so I was looking through some of the stuff, and it's pretty interesting. Mayor Delaney was on it, Malcolm Cruz was on it, some of the old documents, and it kind of brings back a lot of. I don't remember all of them, but I remember some of them.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming and addressing the council. If I could have a motion to approve that date certain.
Okay, I make a motion that we extend the lease for 45 days.
With the certain date of
October- is it
October 11th.
With October 11th being the certain date, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Freddie.
That's all things I have under my updates. Thank you.
All right, under staff updates, item number 10, we have the DOT runway project, resolution 19-08. Danielle?
Okay. This runway project was completed last March. We are trying to finish up the grant application and close it out. During this process, when I was submitting in for reimbursements, DOT offered a supplemental agreement, which is before you now, to cover the local share of the grant, which is going to total of $123,394.85. This is due to the fact that they're now recognizing the City of Avon Park and the airport under the Royal Economic Development Initiative, the READY status,
Yay.
which allows them to waive the local share. So the resolution is to approve us going into this supplemental agreement with DOT.
Hey, David, do you know if this was previously budgeted as an expenditure?
I am not sure if it was or not.
Okay.
It
I'm
was
just-
an expense that's already been paid,
Okay.
so this is just them giving us our money back.
Excellent. Excellent.
That's even
Good.
better.
Does it
All
come
right.
back as cash or as an adjustment to the project?
Comes back as cash.
Okay.
We put in these grants, we pay the project 100% upfront, and then we submit into whoever is under the grant, whether it's DOT or FAA, and they submit back the payments to us.
So we should be adding $123,394.85 to our budget,
To our revenue,
to our
yes.
revenues. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's part of that.
If approved.
If approved.
Gee.
Yes, so essentially for the runway project, the City of Avon Park will not be paying anything for that project.
Awesome.
Great.
So do you need a motion to approve the resolution separate from the supplemental JPA number 3?
You're approving the resolution which
Right.
goes with the agreement.
Okay.
So
We'll just
once you
need to-
approve the resolution, you will be approving the.
We'll just need to read the resolution into the
Yes.
record. Jerry, if you'd be so kind.
There's not a short title to this.
At the very end, that's where the page is. right here.
This is a resolution of the City Council of Avon Park providing for the adoption of a supplemental joint participation agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation.
Thanks, sir.
In the future, it should provide an effective date also.
Okay.
Immediately.
Do we have a motion on Resolution 19-08?
Motion to approve Resolution 19-08.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 11, Danielle.
This is the amendment to the Realign and Extend Taxiway F project, the task authorization 6. This is the construction phase of the taxiway project for the consultant of Amherst. You're just approving them to do the construction phase
Okay.
of the taxiway project, totaling amount of
168.8.
$168,800. This portion will be covered 90% by FAA once the grant is finalized, and I am in the process of getting 5% with DOT. That'll also go before you guys in the near future.
The
So
likelihood-
we don't have it yet?
No.
Okay.
We have to get this approved to be able to start the next process, which is awarding the construction. The FAA contract or agreement will be coming before you on September 9th for approval. It's already been basically approved. We have to wait for Senate.
Okay.
And DOT, Wendy Sands is getting our application together for that as well.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve amendment number 1 for task authorization number 6 for Amherst Consulting.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Ms. Phillips, thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Next up, we have item number 12, amendment to the purchasing manual to include online sales, Resolution 19-05.
You actually agreed to this at the last meeting, but we didn't have the resolution prepared, so this resolution actually finalizes that action.
And it's a resolution of the City Council of Avon Park, Florida to approve the amendment to the purchasing manual and provide an effective date.
Okay, do we have a motion for Resolution 19-05?
Move to approve Resolution 19-05.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Bless you. And if there's no further discussion, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 13.
Number 13 is personnel rules and regulations that were actually approved last week. We didn't have, or 2 weeks ago rather. We have the resolution there now. The council agreed to those changes. This resolution will finalize that action.
It's a resolution of the City Council of Avon Park, Florida to approve amendments to the Personnel Rules and Regulations Manual and providing an effective date.
Okay, so Resolution 19-06. Do we have a motion?
Okay, move to approve Resolution 19-06.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
David, nothing changed in this.
No, this is what you
It's the
approved last
same,
week,
yeah,
or
okay.
2 weeks ago, rather. I'm sorry.
There was an additional portion that was mentioned, and that is in the next line down. Will be
Correct.
item number 14. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
The next portion of that is some more updates to the manual. There will be more forthcoming yet. This is resolution number 1907, additional changes to the personnel manual. All changes were written or approved by our labor attorney, Brian Koji.
So just to be clear on this one, David, you've inserted the FRS pension information on this portion of the agenda item summary?
As well as the military, leave for military service, yes.
I'd like to review more on the pension issue because it leaves it open-ended without any type of cap. Because we do have an ordinance and there's already a resolution for FRS. I gave that to you guys on Saturday. It already exists.
Okay.
And did Brian Koji review section 23?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any, I guess we'll go ahead and read the resolution.
It's a resolution of the City Council of Avon Park, Florida, to approve the amendments to the Personnel Rules and Regulations Manual and provide an effective date.
This is resolution 19-07.
The only thing I would comment on is Brian Koji does not do retirement stuff. That's done by Bryant Miller and Olive. It's David Miller at Bryant Miller and Olive does our retirement stuff. And I've talked to Brian Koji before, and he said he does not do retirement. So I just, he may have reviewed it, but I would think I would verify with him that he'd actually approved this portion of the pension, because it's not. I have not been able to get him to review anything for pensions, even though it's labor laws. Not every labor attorney does pensions. That's just, part of it.
What's his name again? Brian who?
David Miller.
David Miller at the law firm of Bryant Miller and Olive. We've used them on a lot of different things, litigation matters and so on. Most of the stuff that we've had done is out of the Tampa office. This particular attorney is out of the Miami office.
I just want to exclude section 23 changes to this resolution. I just want to establish better the Chapter 121 statute in regards to the established retirement plan, because that leaves it wide open. And what that does is it takes away the authority from the City Council to implement executive level positions. That's what this does, and I don't want that. I want to leave it as the statute states, where the statute is what allows the council, the governing body, to dictate that, not the city manager. So I am not in agreement with section 23 unless we amend it to reflect more accurately the established rules that are going to be authorized to the city manager versus the city council.
I think if there's a contention on it, I would rather just hear from, let David Miller look it over.
I'm perfectly fine with that. So I would exclude.
Take it up at a later date.
So if possible, I would make a motion to approve resolution 1907 to exclude section number 23.
I mean, do we even have to
No, let's leave it out.
do any
You
of
want to leave it out?
Yeah.
at
Okay.
this point?
I agree with you.
Yeah, just wait till a later meeting, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a motion on the floor, but it hadn't been seconded. So.
Okay. So it dies.
Is there a second? Seeing none, motion fails for lack of second. So the intention is to send this to David Miller of Bryant Miller and Olive, have them review it and give us a summary of, number one, if he agrees that it is lawful in the best interest of the city, and what exactly the effect of this is. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Item number 15, RPAC budget amendment, ordinance 7-19.
That's Rick.
This ordinance and the budget amendment is necessary due to the fact that this project was not originally included in your fiscal year 18-19 budget. So it will increase your overall total budget for this current fiscal year. So you're required to do that by ordinance, and then of course you got to have the budget amendment to accompany that. What we're looking for from you is a motion to approve the ordinance and budget amendment on the first reading of that ordinance. And again, under the background of it, the project was not originally approved in the budget, and it has since been revised and authorized by the RPAC committee with the Board of County Commissioners. So that's the reason that this action is necessary.
Okay. We'll go ahead and read the resolution.
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
Oops. It's ordinance 07-19. Did you want me to read it, or?
Go ahead.
Ordinance number 07-19, an ordinance of the City of Avon Park, Florida, amending the budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Ricky. All right, so we have the ordinance there. Is there any questions?
How long do you think it's going to get started before this gets started? I know that some estimates were gotten for this equipment and stuff. Are they going to be able to install it this year, do you think, David? Or
I sure hope so.
I mean, there's a lot on the plate. Anyway, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 07-19.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Spurlock?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
All right, item number 16, request to waive purchasing policy for Boys and Girls Club.
The city has received an insurance check for damages to the flooring and the walls from the water leak that we had earlier in the year. A replacement hardwood floor was best quoted at $76,500, and epoxy floor was best quoted at $47,500. Discussion with Dave Cornett determined that the modular design would be the best option, and we can do the modular for $50,600, and the drywall, paint, and flooring repairs from the damage for $28,245. In order that I don't have to go out for bids again on this, I'm asking for you to waive the purchasing process in order that I can move forward with this. We do have several quotes and things that we've picked up over the last few months on this, and we do have an insurance check in hand.
Got a question for you on it.
Yes.
The portion that was picked was for the, I believe it was for the tiles, or the modified system there.
The tiles and the drywall repair.
Okay. On the tiles, you're going to be painting the lines for the basketball court?
Okay. The tiles that under the construction part was in the office area and all that.
Okay.
The actual floor on the basketball court, those will be painted. It'll have.
Is that an epoxy floor?
No, it's a modular snap together floor, which is what Dave and I thought might be the best. It's got a little give to it instead of the epoxy.
How long does the lines on that system last?
The lines are actually embedded into the
Got it.
material itself.
Good.
And it will be 2 courts. It'll have a basketball court defined on it on one side as well as a volleyball court.
Okay. Any other questions on it?
What was the insurance check, do you remember?
It's about $84,000.
So I know that they're doing other things in there, so
There'll be a little bit of surplus.
okay, so the way I see it, the Boys and Girls Club is kind of our default recreation program. So if there's any money left over, I know that there's some really nice lateral rock climbing walls that you can put in there with nice little cushions that you cover when you don't need them, and you just drop those in case the kids fall down. But they're only about 6 feet tall to 8 feet tall. They're like $2,000. But anyway, I was talking to the boys and girls about that, and they thought that that would be a nice little thing to add if there's any balance left over from that insurance proceeds.
There will be a balance of about $4,000 or $5,000 left on this.
Okay, could you, I mean, there are
Sure.
things, yeah, it would be good for the activities for the kids to stay indoors if it's raining and stuff, but we'd be the only ones in Highlands County with something like that. I think
Rock
it would be
climbing
really.
wall.
It's lateral. It's really neat.
Okay.
It doesn't require ropes or anything. It's just, there's all kinds of them, but Cornett has some samples
Okay.
online. And so if any money is left over, I'd like to see that go back into the rec center and add more amenities for the kids.
Okay. Obviously, we'll have a discussion about what is left over after the
Yeah.
project is done.
Yeah.
Or when we have a guaranteed cost anyways.
Okay. I just need a motion to waive the process where I can get everything rolling.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we waive the purchasing costs for the policies and procedures for the Boys and Girls Club to do their repairs.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes,
Councilmember Spurlock?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
All right, item number 17.
We're pulling that, please,
Okay.
for the moment.
Will there be any discussion on it at all?
David, you don't want to discuss if there's an offer or not?
There hasn't been an offer,
Okay.
other than paying the severance.
Okay, so the offer is pay the severance and the loss, and we won't file a lawsuit, is that what it is?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask is because, I mean, perhaps, I asked him to take this off the agenda because I was under the understanding that there was a complaint that had been filed, and he was talking with Brian Koji on the matter. And so he asked if he could have an executive session. I said, sure. Turns out that there's no lawsuit filed. He simply sent a complaint.
It's a
that
draft.
This is what we'd like to file if you don't give us what we want, type thing. And so the Sunshine Act, you cannot have an executive session without a filed case. It has to be in court or an administrative tribunal. It has to be there, not a threat of being there. Okay, so that's out of the question. But you may or may not want to consider whether you want to settle at all on the terms that have been proposed. We should get the advice from Brian as to that issue, but it's kind of hard to do that without having a closed session.
Yeah, he's kind of leaving it up to us right now as to whether we want to do it or not.
But he feels comfortable, as I understand.
He feels very comfortable with the case that we have.
Okay. So if you want to discuss settlement, then you can do that now in the Sunshine, or you can simply say, no, there's nothing for us to discuss, and that's up to you. But what we can't do is we can't have a closed session. So those are the options. That's what I've mentioned, and you probably didn't understand what I was saying on that. I
So
apologize. I didn't make myself clear.
Yeah.
So that's up to you.
I would prefer that if there's any documentation filed, that we wait until then. Otherwise, just leave up city manager and whatever needs to be done in the time being.
Well, there's nothing to be done.
Well, no,
other
I'm
than-
just
other than-
saying.
Other than accept the lawsuit once it's filed.
Well, I mean, you'd have no choice if it's filed.
Yeah, right. And so, direction to the city manager is.
Is to wait for them to file a lawsuit before we set up an executive session.
Yeah, we could always have Brian
Right.
come talk to us in the Sunshine.
Yeah, yeah.
Without an executive session.
Yeah,
So
but,
that's another option.
but he's not here, so.
who is, I don't know what the lawsuit is. This is my first time
Can we
hearing
name the
about this
individual?
Yeah,
particular
yeah, this is
lawsuit, so.
Josh Turner's.
This is Josh Turner.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And as I recall, this was not submitted confidentially, right? Not that you could have it confidential anyway, because you can't make a decision without being the Sunshine.
Right.
But, I don't want to step on their toes needlessly either. So, if it wasn't made confidentially, the problem was, as I understand it, and I have not worked on this at all, but as I understand it, getting it secondhand, is that he said, I'm not going to sign the release and so on because
He had 21 days at the beginning.
21 days to
Mhm.
either accept or reject releasing us and taking the severance pay or suing us, and he chose to sue us. And then he changed his mind later, and we said, too late.
Months later.
Months later, and we said, too late now, it's waived.
Yeah, so if he were to sue, it would be over the severance that he didn't sign for?
He is agreeing to not sue if we pay the severance now, way after the 21 days is.
Can you mention what that amount is?
It'd be approximately $6,800.
Isn't that what a lawyer's gonna cost him?
And that's your choice.
Yeah.
And I leave that up to you, because it wouldn't be me anyway, so, but,
Yeah.
But for that
But-
kind of money, I'd like to see it go away.
Yeah, I think the best course of action is if we're strongly considering either way to have Brian Koji come talk to us.
Okay.
Okay, you want, I mean, we can't do that unless a suit's filed.
But he can
Unless,
talk to
but
us
he
in
can
the
talk to us in
sunshine.
the open, right?
Right.
You want to have him do that?
I mean,
So,
before you make a decision, I mean, if there's a decision to just do nothing and wait, that's one thing. But if you're going to make a decision on actually executing any type of a severance package or anything like that.
I have told them several times that I didn't think that the city had any appetite for paying any money out.
Right.
And let me ask, if Mr. Koji came and started speaking to this, would the intent or the purpose of his firing and all that be discussed as well?
I think they'd all be open at that point.
Okay,
and
so he
but you
must
would have
know
to
that.
I mean, I leave that to Brian Koji, but at that point, then, of course, if you say things that are negative towards his employment, then, of course, he has an opportunity. We have to give him an opportunity for a name-clearing hearing,
Yeah.
as I understand it, okay?
Yeah. So it seems like the best course of action would be to do nothing, in my opinion.
I agree.
Okay, let's wait.
And if there's an official action filed, then of course we can have an executive session at that point.
Okay.
But like I
Okay.
say, having that out in the open would probably provoke more than it would settle, so.
All right.
So let me ask you a question. So the idea, if we pay him the service pay, which is the $6,800, then everything will be over. But if we do nothing, then we're waiting for him to either file a lawsuit. That's what the only option he has, is to file a lawsuit,
Or do
right?
nothing, or not
Yeah.
proceed.
Or not pursue it at all.
Right.
Yeah, well, the same thing can be said to them. Are they willing to file a lawsuit for $6,800?
And pay for a lawyer, so.
So either, both sides will be paying for an attorney. Their belief is that they'll get fees from us, and, you know, in the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my opinion, it's a frivolous suit. I don't believe that the city has any obligation with this particular case. And if you go ahead and say we're just going to pay out just to make it go quiet, well, how many more will then do the same thing?
Oh, I agree.
I agree with you, but I guess you all have more information than I do about the case, so I
Well, all
really
of
can't say.
all of it's public record. I mean, you can go. get-
I understand that, but I'm sure that it
You can
appears
also-
that you all have been provided more information. This is the only thing that I've gotten concerning this
I haven't
case.
received anything.
Okay.
I would strongly suggest you call Brian Koji and talk with him.
Okay.
Same with you, Mr. Monroe.
But our city manager's recommended it's frivolous too, from your knowledge, correct? Okay.
Yes.
All righty.
So, do we need an official motion to?
Just
I
drop
don't-
it.
I don't think so.
No action.
Okay. All right. Item number 18.
Yes, Board Member Dan Johnson has to resign from the Housing Authority as a board member due to health reasons. Alvin Connor has submitted his application to fill the empty board seat. I'm asking for a motion to accept Dan Johnson's resignation and approve Alvin Connor to fill the empty seat on the board of the Avon Park Housing Authority.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? My one comment would be on the actual application itself, on the second page, change the boxes so they don't have to write teensy tiny letters. Just have just a straight line so they can write as big as they want. You can see he actually didn't want to write inside the boxes because they're so small. So
Yeah, I see that.
change
Who
that,
made that
please.
motion, please?
I did.
Garrett
I thought you
Anderson
did, okay. Just making sure.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
Nope.
Yep.
Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes,
Councilmember Spurlock?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 19, early voting days.
Early voting, times and locations. Now, I've already told you about what it's going to cost, about $1,500 for 2 days. The election this year is November 5th. So do you want to establish Friday and Saturday as the early voting days?
I do.
Okay?
I do too.
I do
That's fine
too.
with me.
You want to go with 2 days instead of 3, because we had discussed the possibility of a third day.
I think Friday, Saturday, there was an objection to Sunday, I understand. so
There
let's
was
just
some
do-
objection to Sunday, and Ms. Ogg also said that Sunday is traditionally a very poor turnout.
I think Friday and Saturday is ample
Friday
opportunity
and
for
Saturday.
anyone to vote.
Now locations.
What are those dates, Friday and Saturday?
November 1st and 2nd.
Thank you.
And the locations that we've done the
Early voting?
the early voting is here.
Right,
In
okay.
this room. The primary locations for the November 5th election, the last election, we did it at the community center. And that was well received. I've heard some responses from some council members that they wanted to take precinct 1 back to the senior activity center and precinct 2 here, as we have done in the past. So I need direction from y'all on which areas we're actually going to reserve for the voting.
I'd like to take it back to the senior center, and then this,
But don't you have to check with them?
I don't know,
Didn't you have a conversation with Penny Ogg about the location?
Penny will do it where we
Yeah.
want her to do it. Now,
Okay.
she has asked for the 2020 election, she's asked for the community center.
Right, which I understand. I mean, it's a presidential election,
Yeah.
it's going to have a lot higher turnout.
Yeah.
One of the issues of why they wanted to go to that was for having the larger turnout of the past presidential election. Obviously, this being an off year, you're not going to have nearly the number of people. I mean, myself, I've always enjoyed having it at the senior center because we have precinct 2 here, precinct 1 there.
Yeah.
It allows you to have one big community event. You can kind of see what's going on from both places. All the candidates typically get down onto the mall, so everybody that's driving by sees it. You're not broken up. It's kind of like a big community party that day, and it's a great thing. So,
I agree 100%.
I don't necessarily need a motion, I just kind of need a consensus from
Well,
y'all,
let's
or
hear-
you can make it in a motion.
I'm
let's
good
see if
with
there's
it.
any
That's
other-
fine with me.
I'm not running. I'm okay with it.
Okay. Okay, so what I'm hearing is a consensus is to do the early voting on Friday and Saturday and have the locations for precinct 1 at the seniors activity center, precinct 2 in the council chambers. All early voting will be in the council chambers as well. That's what I'm hearing.
And what about mail-in ballot?
Absentees are handled through
Elections office.
the
Yep.
elections office, right, not us.
I hear no objections, so passed.
I'll move forward with that, okay. That brings us to
Item number 20
the
is the
Christmas
add-on.
lights, redoing the other half of the Christmas lights for Avon Park.
Oh, I wrote that down
What
somewhere.
is this, Maria? This is in your,
Yeah. don't look it.
We
Remember what
added
you
item
motioned?
number-
I had written that down, so, oh yeah, we approved at the CRA board meeting half of the cost of the lights. So I would like to consider that the council consider that the other half of the cost of the lights be covered by the city,
Okay.
which would have amounted to a total of $1,540, 880 of it going to the Main Street, to the mall area, and 660 going to the south side area.
Is that a motion?
Yes, motion to approve $1,540 for banners and poles.
Hardware. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
second.
Is that the city's cost, and then the other half is from the CRA?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think it's a great idea, it's a good start.
All right, seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes,
Councilmember Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland,
Yes,
Deputy Mayor Bernard,
Yes,
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Under council member discussion, we have the original item number 20, ordinance 17-15. Maria?
yeah, this kind of goes in tandem with the resolution. This has to do actually with modifications to department head salaries and/or job descriptions that have to come to council for approval. This is totally separate from the FRS issue, and it's just separate from the FRS issue. But I would like for the city attorney, if possible, to respond to this in regards to how it affects the FRS executive level, because that's basically what this is doing, is creating executive levels. So historically, this was something that had to do with a conflict with the city's charter, and this remedied that conflict, and basically giving the city council the authority to set the salary range and the job description, duties, descriptions, whatnot, whether it's a modification or a newly created position, so that the city manager can then advertise for that and insert that in the policies.
So I assume you want me to do that at the same time I do the,
Yeah,
FRS.
because these people were hired without this process taking place.
Wouldn't we rather have have an opinion from David Miller of Bryant?
Yeah, that's what
Miller
I'm
Olive?
saying. It's for
Okay.
him to take it to the labor person that would be able to,
that's the way I
you
understood
know,
it.
come out with a response on both issues.
Okay.
That's all. I don't know if you need a motion for that, but,
I understood it that way.
okay.
Is there any further action needed from the council on that?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Nope.
Okay. Item number 21.
This was already hashed
Yeah.
out
Oh, yeah, we
in
already-
the
already got
other
that.
section, so
Okay.
it's done.
Okay.
I'd like to request, by the way, a new binder. My little metal prongs are not sticking, and all the papers want to pop out when I hold my binder.
The 3-ring binder?
Yeah,
I
They're
think
not
they all
meeting.
need to be replaced.
yeah.
Okay,
I agree.
we'll take care of it.
Okay.
We're going to have the regular update from the city manager, and then we do have a person from the public wanting to participate.
Okay. You've got my pending projects in front of you. The ones in red are the ones that have changed. And speaking to Robin Lyford at the Florida Rural Infrastructure Grant from DEO, she told me again last week that she had heard from 4 of the 5 agencies, and everything was still looking good, but still thinks it'll take approximately a month, hopefully less. When Andy Mogul went to the grant training last week, he met with Tim Banks, who was also from DEO, and he gave him a very favorable thumbs up and said things are looking good on both of those. And the one that we were talking about, the 80-20 forgivable, could possibly be 100% forgivable. So things are looking good.
When do you think we'll have an absolute answer on that?
I hate to say.
Okay.
I hate
But
to
at
say.
this point, David, do you feel that the 2 job growth grants, because we wrote the first one and now you're saying there's a second one,
Mhm.
those 2 should cover the entire utility line, right?
I believe so.
So there should be no money coming out from the city to do any matching for that project.
That's correct.
So anything else would be over the course. How long does that 80-20 last? How many years do you have that for?
I can't answer that.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm
But
pretty
those-
sure it was a long term.
okay. But that in and of itself is going to be hopefully before we finish the budget, because it's going to,
That'd be great.
that 20% makes a difference in what we're going to have to come up with.
Correct.
Okay,
Well, that was actually set up in payments, monthly payments over a 10-year period of time. But if they're talking about that being 100% forgivable now,
Right.
then that would go away. But we could go ahead and put what we know would be the actual,
1 year out of 10?
out of the 1 year of payments. We can
Okay.
plug that in there.
Okay.
You got that, Ricky?
And they're okay with
Yes,
that?
sir.
The
Okay.
state is okay with a 10-year?
I believe they suggested it.
Okay,
I believe. But if it's all forgiven, then it's even better.
okay.
Okay, charter revisions are on the November ballot. We just discussed the early voting. 18 East Pine Street, Mr. Brokaw, we now own that property. Congratulations. The closing was last week on the 22nd. Mr. Brokaw has been trying to give this to us for 2 years. And we finally got there and got it taken care of. We had the closing with John McClure's office. Everything was no problem whatsoever. He left us some tools and things in there that our Public Works Department is going to be able to use, a nice 30-foot ladder, extension ladder, and things like that, that he just didn't want to haul away. The only thing that he asked as kind of a side note was, if you're going to make a parking lot, name it after me. And I said, okay, so you're talking about the Brokaw parking lot? And he said, if you can. So that wasn't put in the form of anything with the closing documents. It wasn't an official request. It was just kind of a side remark. I didn't see a problem with it, and I didn't commit. I just said, we'll see what we can do.
I don't have a problem with
Is there law on that?
I'm sorry, I was diverted because I smell smoke.
You smell smoke right now?
I do
Like
too.
a fireplace
Yeah, it smells
smoke.
like a campfire type smoke.
Oh, okay. All right, so we have that property. Now, would you like me to go ahead and get bids on tearing the thing down? Tearing the
Yeah.
house down?
I can smell it now too, yeah.
We have to know what we're dealing with. Obviously, that was the intention of getting the property, was to make it a parking lot as an addition to the Brickell building.
Yep.
So if we have any hope of actually moving forward at all, we have to know what we're dealing with cost-wise.
And did it ever come back that it had
We have all the tests.
asbestos?
No, everything was,
It didn't?
everything was
So
clear.
could the fire department do it as an experimental burn?
They can't do that anymore.
Oh, it's too bad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's, that causes problems in the environment, so they're
Okay.
not allowed to do
Never mind.
that. Practice burns are great, but they're not allowed to do it. Okay, Jim, we've ordered the fence for the backstop for the Main Street basketball court.
Okay, I'd like to add to that we also get all lights installed that were missing.
The light, yes, I spoke with Robert about that. The conduit for the light is already there. All we have to do is just basically wire everything up and take care of it. That will be taken care of.
Think that'll be done within 30 days?
I don't know that the fence can get done in 30 days, because we've just told them last week to move forward with the Brooker bid on that.
Okay.
So it's up to his schedule, not ours.
Okay,
So
we should have the lights up though, right?
lights, possibly.
Okay.
We'll, yeah,
We'll
hopefully.
be back to that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We have the backboard in stock and the pole in stock, so all we got to do is just get the backstop taken care of, put the lights up, and we're done.
Perfect,
Now,
thank you.
there was a question also, I think, from Ms. Gray about lights at, which park were you talking about? Were you talking about the Boys and Girls Club, or were you talking about Ally McWhite?
No,
Triangle.
that's what I was talking about, Veteran Square.
No, this was a separate conversation.
Call it a square?
Yeah, it's called Veterans, that's the real name of
I
Veterans.
thought it was called Veterans
No,
Triangle.
that particular conversation concerned a basketball court. There's a basketball court. It was either the Boys and Girls Club or it was Ally McWhite.
I never said, I don't
No,
remember
I made
that.
mention of lighting, I think, but, you know, if we close our parks down, I personally don't think that we should have lights on at 11 o'clock at night at any park. I
There
mean,
would be a timer on it that they would be cut off at a time certain, probably 10 o'clock at night, possibly 9. But we've got that over here now, I think, at Donaldson Park. I think there's a timer on the tennis
Okay.
courts. And that's all I have.
I do have one question. This one's for Jerry. The Wild building that Mr. Tong and the other lady were working on, the one at 101 West Main, you know, do we own it? Is it ours? Because if that's going to have to be demoed or something, then that has to be put in the budget as well. It's been sitting there that way, looking that hideous for the last 10 years.
How do you say her last name?
Oh,
That's
Helen-
not right.
Yeah.
Helen,
That's not right.
Helen Enigbanyanye.
that one.
You're far better than I am. Okay, so the circumstance on that is that there's been a motion to dismiss on that filed by the county clerk's office, I guess it was.
Mhm.
And I had planned on attending their, the hearing on that, but as it turns out, that was canceled because they, you know, but the case we have is, I mean, I think almost infallible. I mean, attorneys never like to say infallible, slam dunk or any of that stuff, but fact of the matter is, you know, by res judicata, I mean, we've had decisions already in our favor on this on every court level, even in New York. You know, for goodness sakes, they've tried everything. This time, if we're going to spend money on it, I've instructed David Tong to seek attorney's fees for this. Not
From
that-
Mrs.
not she'll be-
Enigbanyanye?
Yes.
Wow.
Why?
They've spent $35,000 buying the place, and they bought the taxes for it. I mean, I know she's pursuing this, but I would just like to move on.
At some point, you gotta say, you know,
Yeah,
we
enough
feel
is
bad.
enough.
Well, and, I mean, I thought that point was actually when he filed in New York
Yeah.
against us, but then, you know, we said, okay, we'll let that lie. But now, once again, it just doesn't seem to ever go away.
Right.
At what point, you stop paying for your attorneys on this thing and start seeking attorney's fees for a spurious case?
Well, she wouldn't be able to rehab it if the condition is that it needs to come down anyway, unless she tore it down. I don't know how you rehab that.
We all feel for her because of the circumstances, but those circumstances are not the fault of City of Avon Park.
I believe it's already been budgeted. It was 70 some odd $1,000 for that.
7,500, was it?
Hmm?
75,000. 70 something
5,000,
thousand, yeah.
Well, we had a bid on that.
That's right.
Okay, but it wasn't ever budgeted?
That was not in the
No.
budget.
Okay. If we receive a favorable ruling on the dismissal, can we then go ahead and proceed, turn it down?
I believe so.
Well, in the meantime, we've opened up the other avenue to put things out for public auction on the internet, which y'all did the resolution on tonight. So would you want to do that, or would you want to see if there's someone out there interested in purchasing it?
That's how she bought it. I mean, you might end up having someone else buy it, and it's gonna sit looking like that for another 10 years,
Let's tear it down. There you go.
you know? I mean,
I agree.
In some cases, I would agree with that, but on this particular building, it is terrible.
right.
I've been in it, I know.
It's
Yeah,
bad.
no one's,
I know.
Yes.
It's awful.
So, anyway,
Okay, as soon as we hear something on the lawsuit is when we decide that we'll
Yeah.
move forward.
absolutely.
Okay?
Okay. Is that everything for the manager's report?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, public participation. Mr. Snell, name and address, please.
Good evening. Good evening, Gerald Snell, 320 East Washington Street,
Yes, sir.
Avon Park, Florida. As most of you know, we had a weekend shooting in the CDBG area that we just pumped all this money into. Ms. Gray was our liaison for Southside many years, and we asked for cameras so many times, and we were promised that we could get cameras. Never got them. And I reached out to several people that I know throughout the FRA that have had problems in certain neighborhoods, and cameras deterred a lot of problems that they had. And I feel as though a young man came really close to losing his life, was shot 2 times through the abdomen, and he survived. We've been promised cameras in the past, nothing has ever been done. I think we need to do something, folks. And also, the CDBG area, at times you ride through, it's absolutely ridiculous. Right-of-ways not mowed, trash receptacles running over, and we just pumped all this money into this area to look like that. I realize we're the South Side, but we are part of the city. You know, some parts of Lacey Hill, the county, looks better than the South Side, and this shouldn't be. David, if you want to, at time, when you get time, I can ride you and show you certain areas. They're absolutely horrible. Some parts of the South Side, some streets remind you of the bottom on the heat of the night. It's just that horrible. And you know, I would like to see better striping on the streets where the paint is worn. This shouldn't be.
Mr. Snell, do you know if the cameras were ever in any kind of an official action?
We
or
received,
They were?
we received,
by CRA or city?
city.
Okay.
yeah, in June, say, well, the technical guy
Yeah,
that
the
does
computer
was having
guy.
problems. It couldn't do this, we couldn't do this, just excuse after excuse. We need to do something. We put all this money into this area, and a few of the businesses say they feel as though problems that might would happen in that area wouldn't happen if it was for a camera.
May I? Was there something budgeted for that?
At the time, I believe the
Yes.
CDBG was going to have the expense out of it, and then it didn't get done, and then at one point, the city manager said that they had funds to go ahead and install them, because they weren't that expensive. They
what
were like
years are we
$80.
talking about?
This is 2015.
Were there any bids, or was there a project?
No, because they had I don't know, they were getting them off of Amazon. I have no idea. I
I
mean,
don't remember either.
yeah, but
And then
there was
the
just,
thing-
it wasn't
the
a lot
other
of
thing
money.
was who
We're
was
talking
gonna monitor
$80
it.
per camera.
And you know, but we were
Sheriff
promised them,
Department.
I don't know, maybe we could reach out, or maybe we could research for a grant for, you know, different crimes, what, you know, to get grants to help with this, but we really need to do something for them.
Yeah.
Well,
for the
what I'd like to do is actually get with law enforcement and find out where the hot spots are, where they think they would be best served.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
gotta-
If that's what y'all would like me to do.
Sure.
Then I can get some
Yeah.
prices on that and see who would actually monitor these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, we talked in the past recently too about if the cameras are up and running, that we could have that information shared with the sheriff's department,
Right. That's-
even maybe live.
Yeah.
I think that's the direction we need to go.
And another question, are the cameras still operable at Ally McWhite? Who monitors those?
One of those was fake.
You wasn't supposed to say that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, but I mean, one of them was just installed up there just to kind of be a decoy, but everybody knows that.
But a couple of them were live.
Yeah, but several of them were
So who
live.
monitors them?
I don't know who has
Can
the
you find out,
codes.
David? Who monitors the
David, a
ones?
lot of those cameras had dark web codes or something access to them where you could go online and you could find, and you could access the little code and then you can pull it up live on your phone
So
or on a computer.
maybe you could go by City Hall and
I don't
share
know what
all
those
you.
codes are. I don't even know where to begin, who would have that. Mr.
Did Jason do
Lister,
those?
Yes.
he had codes for everything. I think Brenda Sleva had some as well. She had a monitor on her desk that had different screens of different cameras that were around town.
And some of the lines on the streets, that needs to be, it's just, it's,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, that's all over
Yeah,
too.
but the safety issue, I guess the question would be, some cameras have 30-day loops, other ones have, 40, I don't know. I mean, the sheriff department, I was attending Citizens Academy, and we were talking about cameras, so I think it's a great idea to get those back in. I personally would like to see them at the MLK field facing the basketball court in that parking area in there, because there's a lot of partying going on weekends there, and, you just can't, but there's no lighting to catch it. But anyway, there's some areas in town that I think could really use a little bit more eyes.
But the restaurant there in Hammock Creek, Mr. Jackson has done a great job in revitalizing that business. And he does his best to keep order as much as he can within his business, but when, they said it would help better if there were eyes outside monitoring.
Okay,
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Gerald.
thank you very much.
I'll get with you.
David, I think there were some cameras as well over at Donaldson Park. I don't know if they're still there.
I
They're
think
there,
still,
but they don't work.
Yeah,
They're
right.
disconnected.
Oh, it's a shame. Okay.
Well, see what you can do with it. I'm sure law enforcement will be most helpful with that. They
Okay.
can share all their programs. And of course, the actual, maintenance issues that were mentioned from the city side, I'm sure can be taken care of somewhat quickly as well. Is there anything else for the good of the city? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address.
My name is Sandy Whitecomb. I live on Lake Avenue. I just want to make a couple
Can you pull
of-
that? Can you pull that microphone closer to your mouth? There you go.
Now,
Thank
is
you.
that better?
Can you say your last name again,
I live
please?
on Lake Avenue, and I just want to make a couple of
Can't hear.
suggestions.
We can't hardly understand what.
On the roadway, cars speed, and they pass each other there constantly. It is dangerous, and kids walk to school there, to and from school there. They start at 6 and 6:30 in the morning walking. And it really is a concern, because I get up early and I sit there with my coffee and I see y'all there.
Mm-hmm.
There are no lines on the street, they've all worn out. So my suggestion is maybe to
Double line.
alert it to get the paint lines painted back on the street where it's double lines, where they, people are reminded that that is not a passing zone.
Sandy, what part of Lake Avenue?
Pardon me?
What part of Lake Avenue were you talking about?
I live on the 400 block,
Okay,
but it's a concern all down that way.
okay.
I can drive up and down Lake Avenue and do be doing speed limit, and I have cars passing me doing 40, 45 mile an hour, at least. I mean, they're flying past. It's just a concern, because there's so many children that walk that street to and from school, going to the middle school or going to Park Elementary, So that was just a concern that I have. The other thing that I had is when you have the Jingle Bell Run and they put the barricades up. Last year, while the race was going on, when they come down to the end there were cars going around the barricades when the racers, were going down.
I know.
Yeah, and there was a few there that really, we held our breath that we was afraid they were going to get hit. My suggestion is maybe having somebody monitor each one of those barricades.
In the past, it was monitored when we had public safety, and we just don't have anybody doing that anymore.
Right.
But I mean, we might need some volunteers, or maybe Mr. Jarrett, who puts on the event, can station people there with some kind of, reflective something.
Lights or something.
I think
Yeah.
you need to find somebody in the city to get trained in MOT in general, because there's plenty of times that becomes an issue.
Yeah, they're just doing that
We
right
just
now.
trained 4 employees in MOT.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying, because I mean, I snail
Yeah,
my way
because
across
you got
that.
younger kids, not just adults, you have the little ones too.
Right.
But there was a few, times last year, we were sitting there in the yard just watching people go past, and that we really held our breath, because a couple people just about got hit. It's not super well lit on that road, but enough for the runners.
I think that's in November.
Pardon me?
Isn't it in November, the Jingle Bell? No,
Jingle
it's in
Bell Run,
December.
it's in December.
It's like December 11th or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have time to make sure that there's sufficient volunteers to be able to monitor that. But I agree with you with the passing on the road. That's happened to me as well. I tend to drive pretty slow and people pass me a lot.
All right, we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
David, that reminds me, I was talking to some residents that live on Circle Avenue, right there by the church, between the lake and the church, and there's a three-way stop there.
Yes.
People just don't stop. They just don't stop. Because, I mean, you could see all traffic if it was coming either way. But there are some youth, apparently, that are just zooming down that hill. And some of the residents were asking, they're getting ready to get a petition and bring it to council to get some speed bumps.
What are the legalities on rumble strips? Can we put those anywhere we see fit?
Now, generally speaking, the rumble strip shouldn't be a problem, but the, where you have a problem is with the
bump.
traffic is calming mounds. There's a statute on that. I would have to check.
The speed
on
tables you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be
But-
flying if they got on, because it's on a downhill. If you put a speed table, I mean, they're just going to end up in the lake.
Yeah.
Well, the rumble strips, I'd like to check on that and see, if there's any statute on that. I don't believe there is, but, I'll check.
Check on that. If we can install those, that'd be a quicker fix, I think.
Both ways, going east
Yes.
and going west, and then
Yeah.
also coming southward, where it
Off
dead
of
ends on the
Delaney.
lake.
Yeah.
It's bad.
I'd much rather see a strip than a speed table.
Me too.
Yes. Agreed.
Anything
Okay.
else for the good of the city? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned. And I'll just say, we had a lot of information, and I thank staff and the council for making it through it very quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you.